play like gods for the next half of football. But we can't be afraid to lose. There's no room for fear in this game.
This is the New Hampshire High School Football Show.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
I don't want them to gain another yard.
You blitz all night. And if they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out.
The New Hampshire High School Football Show is brought to you by the New Hampshire State Liquor Commission's Division of Enforcement.
You got heart, charisma, and a lot of skill.
And now, here are your hosts, Pete Terrier and Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
Let's go play some football.
Happy Thanksgiving weekend to you, and welcome to our final edition of the New Hampshire High School Football Show. This weekend, we have Thanksgiving holiday in the rearview mirror. The state championship games were played a week ago today, and in full disclosure, we're actually pre-recording this show on a Tuesday afternoon.
Boy, you were selling it.
We can enjoy
I was convinced
the
it was
Thanksgiving
Saturday.
Day holiday. Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com with me as usual. Dave, thanks for coming in. And yeah, it's always bittersweet, as I mentioned last week on the show, when the season is in fact over. And I'm sure you felt some of that when you were leaving Plymouth on Saturday after such a tremendous championship game. We'll talk about all three championship games, but I really want to start there, Dave, and what you witnessed on Saturday. Was it what the hype was going into it? I mean, did it live up to the hype?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was a tremendous game, and it was, it's best described as, Plymouth opened with a great opening drive for a touchdown, John Thomas touchdown. And the first possession for Portsmouth, they answered right back, went right down methodically down the field. And from there, I think it remained 7-7 at halftime. And basically, you could describe the game as every time one team made a great drive and scored, the other team, usually Portsmouth, responded, came right back. Every time there was a back-breaking, heart-breaking, game-altering turnover, the other team would do the same thing right back again. There were both teams, Jared Kuhl fumbled, I believe, at the 4-yard line going in for Plymouth, and then Mikey Torr came back. He fumbled at the 1-yard line going in for Portsmouth. So it was as even as it could go back. The game, it was really fun to watch the game plans of both teams and the adjustments. I was with Brian Pafford last night, taping another show, and it was really fun to watch the adjustments that Lenahan made and Pafford and his staff. They did a tremendous job. Really, the kids played their hearts out. I mean, it was 2,000-3,000 people. It was absolutely tremendous thing to be a part of, and I think John Kesty really honestly did a tremendous job of really kind of getting that atmosphere and kind of, the highlight, 11 minutes of highlights. So that's a lot. And, I was really proud to be there. It was terrific.
Of course, you're talking about the highlight package is currently up on NHSportsPage.com if you haven't looked at it yet. I did notice that those things were getting mad views.
Yeah, mad views.
A lot of views for that game, the game that I was at, Concord-Pinkerton. We'll talk about that as the show rolls on. I do want to thank Erin Boss, too, for coming in and producing this thing. We don't get to work with her a lot on the weekend, and that's probably a good thing. 9 o'clock in the morning, and Erin Boss, probably not a good mix, but we do thank her for coming in. John is here with the video camera, so we'll have this thing up on the website as well. You can see me wearing a shirt and tie.
Yeah, you look good, Pete.
A little bit different than what you normally see on the program.
Did you go to the breakfast earlier this week at New Horizons?
I did go to the New Horizons for New Hampshire annual breakfast, the 20th time they've done that, 20th annual event. It was great, a lot of fun, and we're going to be doing a big fundraiser for New Horizons for New Hampshire, the Coaches for a Cause preseason hoop jamboree, which will take place a week from today, as a matter of fact. It's going on Friday, the 6th of December, and Saturday, so next Friday and Saturday, 8 games involving 16 teams from around the state, some great matchups. We'll talk all about that in just a little bit and start to get into the hype a little bit of what you will find in the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show, which debuts Saturday, December 7th.
I want to say one thing. I talked to Dave Keefe earlier in the week, and Trinity moved their dance, their semi-formal dance, so the students could
Are
go
you
to
serious?
the jamboree. Is
Wow.
that cool? Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
very
And I know
cool.
Wyndham had an assembly in the gym, and that the basketball players got up there with the coaches and asked everyone to come support Wyndham when they play Salem. So I couldn't possibly be more fired up. I'm getting a hotel in Manchester that night so we can come in and do the show the next morning. But we'll get into that, next week, obviously. But I couldn't be more excited about it.
Well, let's dip back into that game that you were at,
Yeah.
the Plymouth-Portsmouth game. It went to overtime. I watched the videocast of our show from last week, earlier this week, and I remember towards the end of the show me saying that I would be totally shocked if Portsmouth won that game, and you were like, "Wow, you that's
Yeah.
a pretty strong word."
Yeah.
But I think the point that I want to get across about that is, look, it's not like I didn't think that Portsmouth had a chance to win a game against Plymouth. They beat them earlier this year. I was at the game. I saw them do it.
Yep.
And all along, I knew that if any team was going to be able to do it, it's going to be a team that can spread you out, that can throw the football, that can have some ability out of that quarterback position to run, because you just can't run the ball into the teeth of that Plymouth defense. But having watched the highlight, Mikey Tor, who you mentioned earlier, he tore that defense up. He was all in passing game, the running game. I mean, he was all over the place. He was a huge factor in that game. And he had a lot of fumbles too, unfortunately.
Yeah. What Plymouth did is they put up to eight guys back in coverage, and they basically said, we're going to let you, if you can dice us down the field 7 yards at a time, we'll shake your hand when it's over. But they knew that they were going to be very tough to score on with that defense in the red zone, and that opened up some running lanes from Mikey Tor, who was tremendous. Ran hard, fast. He looks so much like Jerome Bettis when he's running. I know me and the Notre Dame thing, but he looks so much like Jerome Bettis when he's running. And he also caught some balls out of the backfield, which I haven't seen him do a lot of. And there's one play in particular in that game, and John has it on the highlight package where John. So John Thomas's role was to spy Donovan Fenor. And I talked to Donovan last night, and we were talking about it. He basically spied him, and Donovan was saying stuff like, every time I came to the line of scrimmage, John Thomas was staring daggers through me. Like, everywhere I looked, he was looking everywhere. And he said at times he would get tackled, and John Thomas would stand over him staring at him, and Donovan was like, okay, man, I'm down. Like, settle down. And he did a great job, John Thomas, of it. But there's one play where Mikey Tor gets to the second level, and he literally runs over John Thomas, who's a tough kid. And John Thomas sits up and just puts his hands out like, what the heck am I supposed to do? Like,
what just happened?
Yeah, and it's in the video. He just runs him over like a truck. And, they ran the ball pretty well. They didn't throw the ball a ton of times, but they did use the spread to kind of get more running lanes and so forth. Donovan running the ball, I think he had 89 yards.
He's a good runner.
He was great.
He's a good passer.
Two bad ankles, too.
He's just a good athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, and we'll see it on the basketball court soon enough with Portsmouth. I assume he's going to play
next week. Yeah, he's playing
for them. And Pat Glynn, one of the linemen that you mentioned earlier,
he's playing too.
He's a basketball player as well, and McFarland, I think, plays for Plymouth, who I thought had kind of a coming out party, and he's been more of a game manager. I'm talking about the quarterback, Colin Sullivan.
He was great.
He had a big game and showed some things that I hadn't seen before from him. And, when you have 2,000-yard rushers and Jared Keel and John Thomas, and then you got another guy, Justin Robinson, you got some weapons with Reisert at the tight end position, but Colin Sullivan really showed me something in that game.
He was great. He rolled out quite a bit, and it was a design run that was supposed to look like a pass, or was it a pass that ended up being a run? I don't know, but he ran a lot out of the pocket. I think he was one of their leading rushers on the day. He obviously scored a couple of touchdowns, and he threw the ball well when he threw it. He could get it downfield, and he had a huge game. I mean, you can see from, I think you can get the gist of it from our coverage, that they had, first and 10, first and goal in overtime. They had a big block that John has on there, a pancake block that was a good call. So now it was second and 25, or first and 25, first and goal from the 25. And they scored in 2 plays. So they got 25 yards in 2 plays, the last play being Colin Sullivan. But they really, really gutted it out. And then what happened in the overtime is that Portsmouth got to the 6, and they just weren't going to allow Donovan to run in. They had 3 guys waiting, and they basically were like, if you're going to throw over us and score, then okay, but you're not running it in. And I thought the biggest play was Donovan, and you can see Gavin Brickley knocks a ball away on 3rd down. I think Donovan took a little off it to make sure it was a good pass right in the kid's chest. I think if he had zipped it in there, you can see the play. It's on the highlights. If he had zipped it in there hard, I think he gets it there in time, and maybe they score. But, I mean, you can't second-guess it. I mean, it was good coaching. Kids busted their guts all over the place, and it was a big – Colin Sullivan was our player of the game. We named him that.
How tense was it there when it got near the end and it gets to overtime and – there was a possibility, a real possibility that Lenihan could have lost his last game ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Did it get real tense there? I know you were kind of like in a weird position.
Yeah.
You guys were like in the library broadcasting the game on WTSN, you and Justin McIsaac.
Yeah.
Was that weird? Did you feel separated from the game?
No, we were up there with Plymouth, with a friend of mine, Bobby Price, who's the assistant principal at Plymouth. He was up there, and I think everybody expected it to come down to that. I really do. I think both teams really, really expected it. And, it was interesting hearing from both staffs the adjustments made and so forth. And they absolutely expected it to go down to the wire. I think Justin said something after the game that if you combine the final scores of the 2 games, like a 2-point difference or something like that. I mean, I'm convinced that if they played a home and away 7-game series, it would go 7 games. It would be 4-3.
Yeah, the first game was 27-22. This one was 21-14 in overtime.
Yeah.
What did you think of Lenihan after the game? I mean, how he kind of celebrated and the team celebrated. They dumped the ice water on him, and it was
Jesus.
cold. I mean,
that's how George Allen died. Not that I was worried that Chuck Lenihan was going to die, but there was a couple of parents, they were carrying it, and a couple of parents like, no, like trying to. It was 32 degrees out, and Chuck Lenihan's in his 60s. Is like, we're going to drop this thing on him. He was terrific. He looked like he had exhaled. He could not have been more gracious with myself and Justin and John. I was really happy for him. I honestly just wasn't rooting for either side because I think the Plymouth kids are great.
You're connected to that Portsmouth
I'm connected
program.
to the Portsmouth kids, but I really wasn't, and I would have been very happy if they had won. But I wasn't really rooting against anybody. Is a good way to put it. And I think it was great. I think he wasn't, taking it all in that it was over at that point. I think he was just in the moment that he was really proud of these kids. And, the thing is if there's been one blemish on the reputation of Chuck Lenihan, and it's a very minor one, some people have said, why didn't he move up and play in bigger divisions?
I've heard a lot of people, a lot of animosity. About him.
I think they would have done themselves a lot of good if they had scheduled BG in their opener every year, or they played, Central or somebody, bigger once a year, play Pinkerton once every 5 years, whatever. If they had done something like that, but they play the Kennett and the Kingswood and the Lebanon and Laconia every single year, and the way they answer it is, when Portsmouth's in our division, we beat them. When Sauhegan was in our division, those great Sauhegan teams with the Jellisons, they beat them. I mean, go through the years, there have been teams that move around because of enrollment, and every year Plymouth beats them. And so that's the one thing that I remember one year, I think it was like the 3rd year I was doing the website, and I remember they skated through the regular season. And I kind of said something like, come on, go play somebody. Like, go challenge. I mean, it's fun to beat Kingswood 48-0 every year, but I mean, go out and. But that's the one thing. But their answer, and you can't argue with it, is every time those teams came to our division or whatnot, we beat them. And 20 state championships.
That's amazing.
It's unthinkable.
Out of 43. So
that's
basically,
ridiculous.
He wins it every other year. And I think he was in the game 11 other times that he didn't win.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard for me to believe that they lost 11 state championship games in that 43 years. So a truly dominant program.
He's a legend.
Great coach, certainly a legend. And congratulations to Chuck Lenihan and the Plymouth Bobcats for winning the Division II championship in his final season. Now the big storyline is who's going to take over. And he wasn't given that information. I'm sure they know who it's going to be.
I'm sure it's his choice, yeah.
And I don't know if he's staying on as the AD.
No, I think Jim Carrey's taking over as AD. Jim Carrey used to be
not the Jim Carrey that.
No, the actor. He's retiring after Dumber and Dumber 2. He's coming on board. I think the kids will love him. Jim Carrey was the boys coach there for a while, and he's the girls coach there. Very nice guy. I talked to him on Saturday too. Great guy. So I doubt it's Jim Carrey's decision. I mean, it has to be Chuck Lanahan's decision.
Well, congratulations to the coach for getting it done in the championship game. He would have never been able to live with it if they lost that game.
Mike Shanahan will be available, I think, at the end of the year. They might be able to bring him in.
Yeah, bring him in. All right, we'll take a timeout, come back. I want to get into that Division I championship game. Concord, Pinkerton. Who knew it was going to be running clock in the second half?
Pete Terrier can't find a good game.
You know what? I think I had a pretty good run this year. I'm not going to complain. We'll talk about the game and the domination by the Crimson Tide as they rolled to the D1 championship and an unbeaten, untied season. First time in 116 years of Concord high school football that they ran the table and they win it against Pinkerton in a big way. We'll talk about that when we return. It is the New Hampshire High School Football Show, News Radio 610
Back to the best local coverage of New Hampshire high school football on the New Hampshire High School Football Show on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
Thanksgiving weekend, and no, we're not sitting in here live. Just to let you know, we pre-recorded the show earlier in the week, and we did it prior to the Turkey Bowl, so we're not talking about any Turkey Bowl games today. We are going back over Championship Saturday around the state of New Hampshire, where 3 champions were crowned, 3 state champions. A lot different than last year when we had 6 state champions. And the winners were Plymouth in D2, Bow champions in D3. We'll talk about that game against Stevens a little bit later. But now we're talking about Division I, a game that I was at. The Concord Crimson Tide just manhandled the Pinkerton Astros 42-14. And I'm telling you, it wasn't even that close.
Yeah.
Because Pinkerton scored a late touchdown. I think I referred to a couple keen touchdowns late in that game against Pinkerton the week before as pride touchdowns, wanting to make the score look a little bit better in the annals of history. When people go back and say, hey, that 2013 championship game, that was Concord's unbeaten season. They beat up on Pinkerton. It was 42-14. Well, Manny Lattimore scored a touchdown just to add one more to his illustrious career, sort of a pride touchdown. But, man, this thing was all Concord. After Pinkerton actually was leading 7-6 late in the first quarter, Concord really took advantage of some turnovers in the second quarter, ended up having 28 by the end of the half. It was 28-7. And then you think, well, Pinkerton still has a chance to get back in this thing. Concord onside kicks them coming out of halftime. I
saw that.
Sort of what the Saints did to the Colts in the Super Bowl a few years back. They recovered the onside kick, scored a touchdown not long after that. The route was on. About a couple minutes later, it was running time. And Brian O'Reilly said after the game, I don't think I've ever had running time against me. He certainly had his share of running time in his favor, but he thinks that was the first time it's ever happened against his team.
I can only imagine his state of mind and mood after that game. But I was, obviously was in Plymouth, but I was shocked. So when did it turn? Like, when did
Second quarter is when it turned. Matt Madden, who is a tremendous player, especially defensively, and has had some good games on offense as a fullback, just busting things up the middle. Had a big run
against Keene.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some skill, but he's a bulldozer, and he's just really big, strong. But he couldn't hang on to the football. Both teams early in that game, because it was cold, and this was the first time that they were really dealing with bitter cold and wind at the same time. So it was really cold, and that football was hard, I'm sure, maybe a little slippery. And when you get hit, we saw it in the Patriots-Broncos game on Sunday night, it's just hard to hang on to the football. Concord fumbled twice on their first possession. They went 3 and out, and then had like a 2-yard punt that Pinkerton set up shop, I think, on the 21-yard line for their first possession. After Concord's first possession ended in a punt, and then Pinkerton fumbled it right back. Madden fumbled 3 times in the first half and lost 2 of them.
Yeah, and that probably set the tone for the whole day when you get the ball to 21 like that. You're set up to score. You just came off a game where you scored over 40 points, and then you fumble the ball away. I mean, those are the kind of things early on that can set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. But what about the line play? I mean, we talked about how Pinkerton dominated on there. They were just so big against Keene that they just moved them around, and really they hadn't been challenged in the playoffs. And Concord's line played very well.
You've heard the phrase size doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter in that game.
Yeah.
Concord has very, very strong. I mean, their biggest guy is probably about 275. Pinkerton has a couple guys over 3 bills. Mainly they're about 220 to 250 on the line, Concord. They're just strong. I mean, they made a point to get into that weight room last year especially, and they just got real strong. And I think Concord's thing is they got weapons all over the field.
Yeah.
I mean, Leo Sude, the outstanding sophomore, didn't play in that regular season meeting, missed like 3 or 4 games in the middle of the year, and Concord still won in overtime in that game. And Indy was, the main ball carrier for them, and he's kind of like a battering ram himself. But when you have him and Sude as running backs, you got Mark Gaudet, who played some running back this year, kind of like a wing back, so to speak, or a slot receiver. And then you got Samo Smith, who was an outstanding receiver. And then you got that kid, Jacob Zoltz, on the other side.
Yeah.
And another receiver named Nick Como. I mean, they just got like 5, 6 guys. And I haven't even mentioned the quarterback, Robbie Law, yet, who didn't get intercepted all year long for Concord and threw for a record-breaking amount, highest passing yardage in Concord High School football history, touchdowns to a bunch of different guys. He can also run the football when he needs to or when they want to. I mean, this is just one of the top offensive teams that I've seen, and the defense really gets no credit, but they held Pinkerton basically to 7 points in the game until the end, and then Pinkerton scored 14 the last time they played, and Pinkerton scored more points this year than any other Astros team in history.
Yeah.
So that tells you something about that Concord defense.
All right, so you've been doing this a long time, and you're pretty deeply involved in this. Where does Concord rank amongst the teams of, say, the last 10 years?
Oh, well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think they're good. But you can't compare them to, like, Bishop Girton in 2009, which was a great team. Those Pinkerton championship teams of recent years. I mean, even Exeter last year, they were a machine.
But they lost. Exeter lost last year.
They lost to Winnicott one game in a game that didn't count. That was a rivalry
Listen
game.
to you. Here we go.
That Exeter team was very, very good. Over the last couple of years, that Exeter team was very good.
Oh, I'm not saying they weren't.
So
but
I don't think
Concord
that Concord. I don't think Concord is in the mix with that BG team. I'm trying to think of other great teams. I mean, some of those Salem
has a championship team. Canoni.
They might be in that hemisphere. I don't know what the proper word is, but
the South team with Keith Farkas that beat
Pinkerton. I mean, that was a good team, but I don't think it was a great. I mean, that was David Zacco. You mentioned Keith Farkas, but that was about David Zacco.
It's like Farkas was a sophomore that year.
I think the best team in recent memory had to be that 09 BG team.
Yeah. Didn't they beat like Central Catholic from Mass 42 to 14 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just blitzed through. They beat Pinkerton early in the year. They crushed them. That was a game. I think that was the Mike Kelly game when he had like 1 million touchdowns in the game, and then he got hurt and didn't play much the rest of that season, if at all.
Yep.
But I don't know that Concord is an all-time great team, but Eric Brown, the coach for Concord, after the game said, "You guys are the greatest team in Concord high school football history." And I don't know, if that's truly the case. I mean, things were different back when I was in high school, and Concord was always good back then. Portsmouth was very good. I was at a national school that was very good. But I think it's kind of hard to compare eras. But in recent eras, I don't know. I think they're a notch under that BG grade team.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they deserve. I mean, when you go undefeated and you win by a blowout, pretty much all through the playoffs. I mean, the Exeter game was their toughest game, but you definitely are worthy of being in the conversation. So that's what makes it.
I think they just started to feel it. Once they got on a roll against Pinkerton, and when Pinkerton gets down big like that, they're not equipped to come from behind.
Right.
I mean,
we talked about that all year.
They're not going to do what we saw Tom Brady and the Patriots do, is just throw the football all over the place. They just don't have that kind of game. And, once they got down, 3 scores, it was basically over.
What do you think the Keene kids are saying when they saw that score? They're like, what happened to us? I mean, Pinkerton that blew them
I think
out.
Keene may match up better with Concord. I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can defend Concord. That's the problem.
Yeah. Pinkerton
hadn't given up more than 21 in a game all year, and then Concord got the 21 in overtime, and they really scored. What was it? It was they had scored only 6 points going into the final 2 minutes of that game, and then they drove the field, and then they got a 2-point conversion to send it into overtime, and then they scored a touchdown. But someone had mentioned, I think it was the guy, and I can't remember his last name, Matt, I think his name is. He was doing the game on WKXL out of Concord on radio. And Matt Corsetti, who
Oh,
it is
yeah.
on? Okay.
I went to school with him.
He's very good.
John Stark's own.
And I was sitting right next to him in the same area of the press box, and he had mentioned that Pinkerton hadn't, given up that many points all year in a game, and Concord had 28 at the break.
Yeah.
So they might be the best, most balanced offensive team. They were probably better offensively than that BG team. I think that BG defense was equally outstanding. That might be the only difference between those teams. But, Concord's very, very good. And, I'll tell you what, the people up there, everybody was like friendly to me and saying, Pete, you were with us all year. You saw us early, and you were with us all year, and you were right. And I said, well, every dog gets his day, right?
Saw him early. John and I were with him at the Jamboree in August, for crying out loud. Yeah, we interviewed Eric Brown.
But did you really think at that time that they were, a true contender? Because at that time, everybody was still in love with Exeter and, of course, Pinkerton. And, I thought that, Exeter was like number one in the power poll until they ended up losing that game to Nashua South.
I haven't been
I know
given
you
a
don't
vote.
have a vote in the power poll.
What a shame. Keeps me awake often. No, I think that day I was on the sidelines with Justin McIsaac and John was doing the filming, and Justin,
Talking at the Jamboree?
at the Jamboree, and Justin was like, "These guys are pretty good." And I remember,
You remember those running backs, Sude and Wally Indy. No one knew how to say their names.
no,
But they knew that they were good.
No, and I knew who Seymour Smith was already, and Robbie Law. But yeah, they looked tremendous early on. But yeah, we had them. It was funny, The first interview we did with them, Justin's in shorts, talking to them on the field, all nice and warm. It was probably 70 degrees. And then the last interview we have was you all bundled up on a 32-degree field in the middle of November. So that's kind of fun when you kind of have that kind of, bookend to the season.
Yeah, and Eric Brown, his teeth
Nice guy.
his teeth were chattering when I was talking. I felt bad. I mean, he looked like, and he's a very humble guy, very reserved guy, very soft-spoken. But I hope he let it loose a little bit that night and enjoyed that one. And I want to give a shout out to Robert Law's mother, who said, "Please call him Robert. That's my son."
That's the funny thing. You just gave her a shout out, but you've been calling him Robbie for the last 10 minutes.
Well, I know, but everybody calls him Robbie. But I think she was just giving me a little.
I think she
grief.
calls him Robert when she gets mad
But
at him.
I'll tell you what, that whole, the athletic department, Steve Mello, all those guys up there, they were great to deal with.
They were great to us in Plymouth. And Jim Carey and Bobby Price and all those guys could not have been more accommodating to us. So, yeah, same thing. We really appreciate that. And they were great to us up there.
All right, we'll take a quick timeout, come back, get into that Division III championship game. Bo taking on Stevens, and Bo was just dominant defensively. What a dominant running game they had. They, after losing their season opener 7-0 against Pelham, a team that, we really thought was the best team in Division III. Bo proved over the course of the long haul that they are the champs and they're the best team in the league. We'll talk about the Falcons' 20-6 victory over Stevens when we return. It is the New Hampshire High School Football Show, News Radio 610 and 96.7.
From Manchester West to Winnicott, Central to Somersworth, and Portsmouth to Plymouth, the New Hampshire High School Football Show brings you the best coverage in the state on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
We should probably add Bo to Claremont into the mix on that sweeper here. It is the New Hampshire High School Football Show, our final football show of the year. Next week, we make the transition to the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show. Dave Haley giving it the triple fist pump there. You saw it on the video, the nhsportspage.com video camera. John Casti, the great John Casti, in-house filming the program so you can see it. And Dave, I know you get excited about basketball, but let's talk about one more football game here before we start making the transition. Bo in Division III. They were in the toughest conference out of any conference in all of D3. They were in there with Pelham and Campbell, and somehow Somersworth got into that South Conference in D3. But that was a murderer's row going through against those other teams. Their real tough competition came from, and I forgot to mention, did I mention Campbell in the mix there?
Campbell's in there.
Their real tough first game of the year, 7-0 Pelham. Pelham wins that game. and they end up facing off in the conference championship game, and Bo ended up breaking open a close game late. Pelham was saddled with some injuries in that game. The quarterback got hurt, and I think Chris Medeiros was really shut out for the most part, shut down.
Joe Slattery got hurt, yeah.
So Bo survives that conference. They go on, and they're dominant in the semifinals, if you will. And they got a little bit of a tough test from Stevens, which is a very good football team. But Bo ends up winning at 20-6 and proved that they were the best in the league.
Yeah, and I think you have to. My vote's going to have to go to Matt Ehrenberg for the Player of the Year in that division. He was tremendous. He had 132 yards rushing in the championship game. But they really, in talking to head coaches in the division from my scouting report preview, just that they were absolutely in tune offensively and defensively. They flew to the ball without over pursuing. They tackled well. They weren't the biggest team, but they just seemed to execute better than anybody else. And they had some nice weapons on that team. Derek Polish was really underrated as their quarterback, and kids like Chris Robbins and Ehrenberg, as we said, and
Alex Reitz. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
And they played the toughest schedule. They came, as you said, out of the toughest division, and they had a lot of respect for Stevens. They battled Stevens in the past, in division when it was Division 5, and Donald Pellerin, would be right there for Player of the Year. Ryan Tangway, very good quarterback for Stevens. Nathan White, there's a lot of good players, but in the end, Bo just defensively was just the best team. And once they got by Pelham, my concern in that division was that the winner that came out of that conference was going to blow everybody else away. It didn't happen that way. Stevens battled them in the finals. They were down early, but they kept battling to the end. 20-6 was the final, but it ended up being a good final.
Now, you mentioned Polish as a quarterback. I always wondered what it would be like to be sort of that quarterback that your job is to hand off the football. You don't really get to throw the ball that much at all, maybe once, twice, 3 times a game if you're lucky. How do you kind of grasp that role and run with it? And if they let you run a little bit, that might be okay. But in his case, he's just handing the football. I guess it's just you're part of a winning team.
Well, you're reading the defenses, about pitches and like where you're going with it and so forth. And he was very respected by the coaches I talked to. They said this kid has got athletic ability. He doesn't get all the headlines, but he's certainly capable, and he's somebody that opposing coaches had to game plan for. So, yeah, it's interesting. Pinkerton has guys like that too. It's like, they're famous for handing the ball to other people, but I think there's a lot more to that. And that's impressive. Bo's a good program, but they were great this year.
What they win? 2004. They won 2004.
Yeah. Now you're going back before I started this, but I don't think they've won one since I started doing the site 7 years ago.
Yeah,
so.
I think they won in 2004, and that was early in their program history. So we give credit to them. Good job by Stevens getting to the championship game. I've heard nothing but good things about Barnes Park, the home field for the Stevens Cardinal, and how great of a place that is to go see a football game. And maybe next year I'll have to take a trek out there and check out a little D3 football.
Yeah.
Speaking of D3 football, do you think that we're going to have the same type of setup next year? Because this was a one-year experiment. I think they're coming back with 3 teams. They might tweak it, move some teams around a little bit. I know Portsmouth is moving up to D1, so and I guess the word is West is going to move down to D2. Which probably should happen. And I think Portsmouth will be fine in D1. They may not be the dominant team that they've been the last several years, whatever division they've been in. But I'd like to see them stick with the 3 division format again next year.
I think, it sounds like they're going. I think 4 would be fine, but I was happy with 3. The thing with a school like Portsmouth is, in a couple of years, they're going to be back under 1,000 to about 950 students. And I know this comes up, and it feels like I'm picking on the big guys, but here it goes. You got 950 students. You're playing Pinkerton, who has 3,200. There's got to be something you can do. That's a pretty big disparity, when you're talking about numbers. And I know Dover, kind of has that same complaint and so forth. The smaller teams always are. And look, Monadnock was one of the smallest Division II teams this year. They may have been the smallest. I think it was them and somebody else. But, I don't know. There's a lot of teams to stick under one roof, I guess is what I'm saying. There's a big difference between, especially if some of these schools, if West ends up going away and then they combine, some of those kids go to Memorial and Central. I mean, you're going to start seeing, 3 or 4 teams who just have way more students than anyone else in the division.
All right, we don't have a whole lot of time to go over this, and it's something that really takes a whole lot of thought to put into it. But you're doing something with nhsportspage.com, asking different media members to give their players of the year in each division and some runner-ups and things like that. You sent the email out earlier today. I looked at it, and I was like, man, that's going to be tough. Let's start with Division One. The obvious names, and I'm not going to say Player of the Year. I'm just going to give the names that deserve consideration. Trevor Knight from Nashua South, Alex Parento from Keene, Manny Lattimore from Pinkerton. Who am I missing? I mean, I know I'm missing some people. Oh, Josiah Wade. How can you forget him? He only ran for 556 yards in one game and had a 2,000-yard season. Concord, I think that it's one of those split vote situations.
Yeah.
If I had to say one guy from Concord, maybe Wally Indy.
I would say Law.
Maybe Robert Law. Maybe. But I think it's it's really hard for me to point out one guy and say he's the guy.
Yeah. I think it is an ensemble cast kind of thing with those guys. I mean, you name the guys.
Maybe most important to his team, Trevor Knight or Parento. Josiah Wade. I mean, without him, what is Central in the playoffs? No. It's almost impossible to pick one guy this year in Division One.
Yeah, no, agreed. But I think we're agreed on who the 5 guys are, and then from there, it's who you deem to be the most important guy to his team. But yeah, I think those are the key guys. I mean, the first name that pops in my head is Trevor Knight. I don't know if he's the guy I'll put one. But what I ask the guys to do, and I send it out to a lot of media members that I know that just kind of know the state, and not just regionally, and is basically to who your player of the year is and then the 4 other guys after them. But I think that's my 5. It's Trevor Knight, Josiah Wade, Manny Lattimore, Alex Parento, and who am I missing?
Robbie Law, you said? Josiah Wade?
Yeah, did I say Josiah Wade?
I don't know.
I'll watch the video back. But yeah, those are my guys that I would say that are the 5 guys.
Division 2. Does Carmen Giampetruzzi get in there? I don't know.
No. Because he just didn't play enough games.
Does obviously in D2 Donovan Fenor? I know he was hurt, missed some games, but I think he definitely belongs in that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know how to say his last name. Ivan from Merrimack Valley.
Niamagabo.
Yeah, he's we can all laugh at how I pronounce that.
He belongs in that conversation.
Oh, absolutely. He may be the player of the year.
What about
division.
The Plymouth guys? I mean, is Keel and John Thomas, they kind of split votes there, I would say. Maybe both of them deserve to be in there.
I'll tell you, 2 prominent coaches in that division say Kyle Reisert is the best player in that division. Like, they told me straight out that he's the best football player in that division.
But I don't think he put up player of the year type of stats.
Because he's a defensive guy and
a tight end,
in
an offense that doesn't throw.
John Thomas, Colin Sullivan, Jared Cool. I think Jared Cool led the division in touchdowns. Any of those guys are worthy. You got to talk about Wyndham too. Some of the kids over there. I think
the quarterback McGinnis maybe.
Yeah, and Brandon and Austin Chambers from Trinity is another kid I think should get consideration. Ian Landry, very good defensive player for them. And then Monadnock, Drew
Beluski.
Beluski, yeah. And then Dylan Lane's another kid from Monadnock.
What about the QB, Isaiah Prince?
Isaiah Prince, yeah.
I mean, we could just go on and on and on and on and on. All right, quickly, D3. You're the one that is asking these difficult questions, so I blame you. Ehrenberg. Chris Medeiros, it's unfortunate he got hurt, but he had a great year for Pelham.
Max Triano, honestly, from Guilford, Max Triano.
I knew there was a Guilford name that was going in there.
He put up huge numbers.
What about Christian McKenna, the quarterback from Campbell?
Yep, he deserves there. Matt, how do you say, Tato?
From Brady.
Tato. I'll tell you who might be the MVP of that division.
Don Pellerin.
Jake Valinsky, the defensive
From
player for
Epping
Epping
Newmarket?
Newmarket, who's tremendous. He could definitely be a guy in that. Christian Serrano is a very good running back from Winnisquam. I think Enrenberg's the guy I'd probably get. Oh, and Donald Pellerin, obviously, from Stevens. He's got to be there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're going to get the all angry email team.
All angry email. That's for basketball, yeah. I get a few.
We'll surely get some. Send them to Dave Haley at nhsportspage.com.
I had a kid last year on Twitter thank me for putting him on the all angry email team. I love it.
Very nice. You got to love it. All right, we'll come back and we'll start to transition into Hoop Talk as we will debut the first edition of the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show next weekend. But we got a great event coming up at Alvern High School, the Coaches for a Cause preseason basketball jamboree. We'll tell you about the matchups and how this thing got together. And it's an event that is going to benefit New Horizons for New Hampshire. Charlie Sherman has done a lot of work with us, along with Kevin Bonney, the former Alvern coach. We'll talk about that when we return to the New Hampshire High School Football Show, soon to be the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show on News Radio 610.
Place for local high school football talk. It's a New Hampshire High School Football Show on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
I know it is the New Hampshire High School Football Show, and we only got a couple minutes left, so why not start to transition to Hoop Talk? Dave's been waiting for this ever since our first show, right after Labor Day weekend.
Settle down.
Dave's time of year is here. It is basketball season. It's going to tip off around the state this weekend, especially in Hudson, New Hampshire, Alvern High School. Friday night, Saturday, all day, the Coaches for a Cause preseason jamboree to benefit New Horizons for New Hampshire. nhsportspage.com, the Alvern Boys basketball program, putting this thing together. And Dave, I remember sitting down this summer trying to plan this bad boy out and make the matchups. As we sat there, where was that? At Auburn?
You and I. Yeah, you and I did matchups.
Dave Keith from Trinity. And we concocted, I think, a pretty cool plan.
Yeah.
We're going to have 3 games on Friday, and the first game is at 5 o'clock. And you got Windham and Salem. And, hey, these are schools that were together. I mean, brothers that are playing on this team used to play together on the Salem team a few years ago, and now they're going to play against each other. That's going to be cool. That's probably the first meeting ever between Windham and Salem.
Yeah, and I was surprised when I talked to both head coaches, Todd Stephanides and Rob McLaughlin, that they don't play each other regularly. So this is exciting to get these two together, and it was you and I really put these together, these matchups. They really gave us carte blanche to do that, the times and everything. What was funny is up in Plymouth the other day after the championship, I said to Colin Sullivan, I said to him on the field, I said, I'm going to tell you something, because he's a great point guard for Plymouth. And I said, I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't, but you were like one of the last teams not to get in this thing. And he was like, oh, no. He's like,
They were on the bubble. Their bubble was
They were.
burst.
I brought them up. They and Winnicott were the two teams. But anyway, that's going to be tremendous at 5 o'clock. And then Bishop Girton takes on Brady at 6:30.
That's going to be a tremendous game.
Oh,
a Catholic school battle.
The
You
Bell
got
Brothers.
The Bell Brothers against Bishop Girton.
Yeah.
Team that lost in the championship
BG's
game.
going to be good.
Won.
Jim Mignol likes his team a lot. I've talked a lot to him. And
that should be a fun game.
he's a good one, and he's excited. And then, Merrimack and Pelham. I'm calling it now. Pelham is going to beat Merrimack at 8 o'clock on Friday night.
You got Eric Gendron, his senior season. Let's see how he comes out this year. Had a tremendous year last year against, Keith Brown and Pelham.
Yep.
And
Jake Fick-Norris.
he's the best player that not a lot of people know about. You're going to know about Keith Brown this year,
a
aren't you?
sophomore. Oh, yeah. He broke his foot last year at the end of the season, so that's going to be tremendous. And then we start again at noon on Saturday.
And who's playing the first game on Saturday? Newport and Alvern, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, Plymouth didn't get in, Winnicott didn't get in, but Newport's in this thing? Why,
Well,
Dave?
you
Why?
got 8 Division I teams, and then 8 and on. I told Seth Guerin, and no offense to the Alvern Bronco team, don't take this out on me, but the best player on the court is named Andrew Hood, and he will be playing for Newport. He's not the Division I kid, so that's where it starts, noon.
And you hear the music, so it means we got about a minute to go through the rest of the matchup. So
1:30 Spalding against Lebanon. 3 o'clock Bedford takes on Portsmouth. Jim Mulvey against Mike Fitzpatrick. 4:30 Central Conant. I know you're excited for that one. And then the big one, the 2 defending champions, Trinity takes on Pembroke at 6 o'clock.
So more information on that. Check out the
Let's
website,
sell it out.
nhsportspage.com. Check on the Coaches for a Cause link. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for it. All right. Hey, Happy Thanksgiving weekend, everybody. Time to make the transition. We're going to be doing the show on the road from the Toys R Us in Manchester, part of the Stuff of Us Toys for Tots drive. Next weekend is going to be a lot of fun. For Dave Haley, for the great John Kesty on video, for Aaron Boss for making it happen for us on the buttons, I'm Pete Terrier. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Adios,
We'll be
football.
talking hoops in 1 week.